Hey everyone, it's Des and Marco with After School with the Admins. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, share with a friend. Here's our newest episode.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of After School with the Admins. I'm your host, Marco Torillo, and I'm here with my co-host,
Des Caldwell. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Whatever time of day you're tuning in, we appreciate you tuning in. We have return guests today. We've got the doctors, Kelvin and Rhonda Taylor Bullock from the Bull City. Welcome back. We are so excited to tune back in with you guys. After our first episode, we got a lot of love online. We got a lot of people who, weren't feeling some of the, as they say, DEI talk as well. So we're excited to come back around to it. Would you please, the two of you, let us know what you've been up to since our last episode?
All right. So again, it's great to be here. Thank you for having us on the podcast today. And some things have evolved as far as our work since the last time we got together. I've actually stepped into a new role in school leadership in a historic charter school here in Durham. So I'm now the executive director for Maureen Joy Charter School in Durham. And so the work that we have been doing as far as, advocating for better outcomes for Black and Brown children, we are continuing to carry on that work in a different capacity now. And so I now kind of work in multiple spaces as far as the work here at the school and continuing the wonderful work that we're doing through We Are. And we're like right on the cusp of one of our one of our primary programs that we do, which we'll be hosting next week. And I'll pass it to Rhonda because that's a major thing that she's been working on.
Yeah, thank y'all so much for having us back. It's good to see you. We've been working on quite a few things, really trying to brainstorm and navigate how to pivot in this season. As you all talked about the anti-DEI sentiments that were coming through on social media, we also, we felt the impact of that financially. And so we've just had to make some decisions around, what can we do in this season and what do we have to pause? How do we continue to pursue different means of funding? But the work is still happening on a shoestring budget. And so I know we're going to talk more about this later, but we've been really planning and working with our collaborative team that's a part of our Let's Talk Racism conference, and which will be happening next week. And just trying to get ready and figure out how do we continue to reach educators in particular, but also, children and families when direct access to schools is being limited. So how else can we continue and further our mission without maybe working directly with schools? How are we showing up in the community in ways that maybe we hadn't previously done? So we're just trying to figure out and how we're utilizing social media and videos and all of these Instagram to, continue educating people when our ability to be in front of them is being limited in this season.
Well, I appreciate the work you're doing. I am at a magnet school. Kelvin, you spoke about charter schools. Obviously, nonprofit work is being done as well. We all have felt some pinching happening in our pockets. I know for myself, we have not received the funding that we typically receive. We are unashamed in our promotion of the DEI work we do. I will continue to say that. And so that has cost us. monetarily. But as you also know, we still have to get the work done. So doing more with less, unfortunately, becomes something that we continue to have to do. I want to jump right into some of the feedback we got online, particularly TikTok, which has been interesting experience for me. I primarily try to run our TikTok page, and I know Marco was on there some as well. But I try to interact with some of the followers and then some of the passersby as well. But some of the feedback we got from viewers, not listeners. One person said diverse classroom libraries don't help in any meaningful way. And the more we keep pushing these topics, racial equity in particular, the more we keep racism alive. Where do you believe these sentiments come from, and what is your response to them?
Yeah, I could start on that. One of the things that we've done some reflections on, and Des, also going back to our days of homeroom, I actually wrote a poem about, and the title of that poem was Fear. And I truly believe that a lot of the pushback that we experience in doing this work is people, there's a fear that some people have about maybe their history being erased, or maybe that someone else is going to get access to something that they don't have. And I see it as unfounded fear. And so there's no evidence that having more diverse classroom libraries is going to be detrimental to any group of people. It's only going to help everyone to thrive and do better. And for kids of color who historically haven't seen themselves in like classroom resources, it's affirming for them. And also, I mean, it can be an encouragement to read, and just thinking about, like, when I see myself in certain texts, I'm more inclined to want to engage and read and learn. And so I feel like the core of people's pushback against a lot of these things is unfounded fear. And there, I feel like there's so much more I could say about that. But I'll just stop there and pass it to Rhonda and see, Rhonda, your thoughts also about so what's the sentiments that kind of undergird some of these things we're seeing.
Yeah, I think part of it is racism. That's just it. And when I'm using racism in this term, I'm using it because when people say diversity doesn't help, let's break down, what does diversity mean? Diversity comes from allowing people, first having to name that historically it's been white male authors, white male literature, white male centric, as far as like scientists and artists, and everything had been white male centric, cisgender. Right. And so when we say diversity, we are talking about books that include people who are not just white and male and cisgender. So in essence, what people are arguing is putting books with people of color, people from family structures that may not be the traditional family structure that we typically see in schools, or putting women, putting people who are immigrants, putting people who speak diverse languages, people who speak Spanish, who speak French, anything other than English. So that's what you're really saying. You're saying, no, this is a white male-centric space with English only and American only, right? So it sounds ignorant. So I think it's racism and it's ignorance inherent there. And I think it's important to break down, because diversity covers a big term, right? Because it's a social construct. And what are we really saying when we say we don't want diverse books? That is ignorance. There's no data to support that diversity harms us in classrooms, but there is data that supports a diverse classroom, a culturally relevant classroom actually improves the academic achievement of everyone.
Mhm.
Right? It improves the academic achievement of everyone. So if just say you don't want everyone to succeed, say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say too, as far as diverse libraries or addressing issues of diversity keeps racism alive, I like to say I think racism keeps racism alive, and being racist is what allows racism to thrive. So the idea that by acknowledging the impact that racism has had on our society and the outcomes for different groups of people is what allows it to continue to exist. Like that's not that's not founded in any history or data or facts either. And so, it is by naming the inequities and the injustices that have happened, which align with, which have been connected to different racial groups, by naming those things and addressing those things. Those are the ways that we reduce racist outcomes in our society. If we act like it doesn't exist, then those things can continue to thrive and grow. And so, yeah, I just also wanted to note that no, speaking about or addressing issues of race and racism is not what allows racism to continue to thrive. It's actually being racist and having policies that favor one race over another.
Thank you for saying that. One of the conversations turned into one of the combatants at that point. I call them combatants after a few exchanges, telling me they didn't have a racial bone in their body. To which I told them, you may not, but you do have some racist organs, and your heart and your brain are definitely compromised right now with the racial flu. And we're doing our best to, try to get you the medicine you need. I also like to add that historically, only certain groups have tried to limit or prevent other groups from being able to read. And, seems like we are, we repeat those cycles every now and again. Marco, do you have anything to add before? Subject.
See, the only thing I was going to say is it was ignorance at one point, but really it's not ignorance. It's deliberate in the thought process of it. I think about kind of the statement, Rhonda, that you made about the fact that studies even show the fact the more diverse the literature is, it actually helps all students. And we say, at least in my school district, and we talk about mirrors and windows, like the fact of looking into other people's worlds or getting a chance to see your own world in it and the values that happen from it. And the person who's probably writing it, as we've been talking about, is an individual who you can throw a rock anywhere in a library and you're going to find a book that looks like them, sounds like them, and acts like them. Not everyone has that same exact ability. So when we see that and we talk about why don't kids want to read? Why don't kids want to learn this? Sometimes they don't see themselves in it. Experiences are there. Experiences matter. If they find a book that's reading about something that looks like their life or can help someone who there's their friend who's like, I don't understand why you have this issue, lets them see into that world so they know it. It may not be the same as experiencing it, but it gives them a chance to know a little more. And I think that's why it's so important. And I think it's something that it really does keep racism alive, because if you're not willing to think about that aspect and you're not willing to look at that, you want it segregated, because you can't expect a student, it's not going to say all students, but you can't expect some students to be able to connect to some of the literature that's out there that was made for a white student in 1950 and being like, well, that one has a character that you should know about. Like, it should match anyone. No, it doesn't, because not everyone had the same life experience. So that's why we need new books. It's why we need books with diverse authors. Like those are extremely important because they give those experiences that others don't always get.
But it is possible, right? Because as an English major, English teacher, I connected with all of Edgar Allan Poe. I don't believe there was one Black character in any of Poe's work, at least not Black in skin color. And you know, I was able to connect. So if I'm able to connect, then why can't that work in the opposite direction? So
can I just interject one thing?
Oh, please do.
Sorry, before I felt we were about to pivot, I wanted to just uplift, since it's Women's History Month, I forgot how y'all called it, Des, but I wanted to name that windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. That is Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, who is a Black woman who coined that phrase. So a lot of times I had noticed that we were using that phrase a lot just in some presentations, and then even in some sessions we were attending. And then I looked up, well, who, I was trying to get some more research, and I was like, oh, wow, this is a Black woman who coined that phrase. So I just wanted to, honor her, incite her. And I was sitting here trying to find it because I couldn't think of her name, but I found it. But yeah, she's dope scholar, and she coined that phrase.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, we are referring to March as Black Herstory Month.
That's
and
it.
We are further honoring Black History Month, since it was so cut short, already the shortest month, but further cut short with all the snow days, and obviously focusing on Women's Herstory Month as well. So before we continue on, I do have another question or comment sort of about social media. But Kelvin, you brought up homeroom. I don't know that we talked about that the first episode, so I don't know if you want to share a little more about what homeroom was.
Okay, so of course, Des and I, we go back. We used to work in the same school. He was an administrator, I was a teacher. And one of the things that resonated with not only us, but others on our staff is, hip hop music and poetry and things of this nature. So we used to have a collaborative after school where we'd come together and we'd share some of the pieces that we've written and have like sometimes a cipher of sorts. Now, I wasn't too much on the cipher because that freestyling it's not my calling. But if I could write something down, we'd come and we'd share. And a lot of times especially when you have educators of color, like we're sharing this poetry, but there's like a social message also often ingrained in it. And so that's the spirit of homeroom. Homeroom is what we called it. And so I've continued to carry that spirit of activism and advocacy through poetry and written rhymes that we had way back then. And that was a few years ago. We're not going to name how many years ago homeroom was, but it was a couple. So that's what we're talking
about. So it's crazy enough, I am going to name, because what we do is we would just come up with a topic. Someone would just throw a word out there, and we would have a week to come up with something creative around that word. And so so on 12-12-12, the topic was duck.
Wow.
So I don't know who, I don't remember, but someone threw out the word duck. And so I emailed myself that particular poem. So I still have it. I'm not sharing it today, but
it was anticlimactic in every way possible. Hope you know that. That was, you had prepared everyone who's listening for something coming up, and you just ended it with, I'm not going to say it today.
I mean,
just want to go and let everyone know, but I'm not saying it.
So I also see fear. So you mentioned that being one of the topics. So the only reason I'm not is like these were performed. Like we took a full week to like get ready, right? And so like I can't, I said this is December 12th, 2012. I'm not in that space, but just like it was, before. I don't know that we used the word affinity groups back then, and maybe some people did. I didn't know. I didn't know the term, but we sure enough created a space for those of us who were like-minded and were really looking to come together in that way and experience our jobs and each other, and this creative outlet was there for us. And so I mean, I'll always be appreciative for that, especially as an administrator being welcomed in with so many. I think everyone else was a teacher, and so for me to be welcomed in as the administrator, new to the building, and people were a lot more talented than I was, certainly. There was a point in time where I thought I was going to be a rapper, but that was that ship sailed a long time ago. All right, back to the topic at hand. So, oh gosh, where we want to go next? Back to social media. So we are seeing pretty much each time we post something that talks about creating systems that push educators to rethink how students learn, or how teaching and learning, how that relationship exists, we're met with vitriol. I mean, I don't really know a nicer way of putting it, with people who believe that we're asking too much of educators, teachers in particular. And we're not asking enough of our students and parents. So while this is a nuanced topic, what has been your experience, and kind of what's your response to those who are saying nope, that's too much. We just need to put it out there, and they need to meet us halfway, or maybe more than halfway.
It's interesting because I just did a social media post through We Are's social media page that talked about, if we stopped meeting people where they are and where they should be, we could make a little more progress as it relates to racial literacy, and thinking about, culturally relevant teaching and DEI in the classroom, because I feel like the means of operation has been meet them where they are. And in any other context, that's kind of what we do as educators. We meet students where they are, and then individualize, their learning process, and then help them get to where we're trying to go. And what I've seen is that, I've been doing anti-racism work explicitly now for 11 years, and we're slow walking. We've had so much access to knowledge and information that we got to start cutting back on the excuses, right? And a lot of, I've recognized that in me trying to meet people where they are versus speak with them as if where they should be, I'm dumbing myself down, right? Like I am too. This is too much, right? Like I'm living in a reality and you're living in a fantasy world. Okay, that's Lauryn Hill. She was like, fantasy is what people want, reality is what they need. And at this point, meeting people where they are is a fantasy, because Black people and brown people are having to live in the real day to day. And so if I have to tone down my experiences, or tone down my fierceness or my anger because you aren't there yet and you can't see the present dangerous, scary reality, is harming the movement to me. It's harming the progress. And so it's funny because I was just asked this on a panel and I said, 10 years ago, I was meeting people where they were 10 years ago. And some people are like 30 years ago, right? Some people are like 40 years ago. And I'm like, you know what? Let's try something a little different. At this point in my life, I'm not the teacher to meet when it comes to like doing anti-racism work in DEI. That's no longer within my skill set. I don't have the patience for that. Somebody else might. So I'm not saying throw it away all the way. But for Dr. Rhonda Taylor Bullock on March 13th of Black History Month, I'm gonna meet you where you need to be. I'm trying to get you to where I am. I'm from the future, okay? And I can't keep dealing with all this stuff in the past.
Can I ask you, if you don't mind, going a little deeper in that question, going a little deeper with your response, because I love what you were saying there. My thought then is, I just want to think of the opposite side to it. Then what do you do next with those same individuals that everyone keeps trying to say you got to meet them where they are, instead of like, how do you get them to go to where, how do you find that expectation to get them to where you want them to be then at those points? If you can, I'm asking that question for there.
I think that's somebody else's job. Like my job now is to work with the people who are already here with me and figure out how do we organize? How do we coordinate? And so one of the things when we were looking at Hillside, when we were teaching back in the day, and we were thinking about change and transformation at a school, and we started thinking about a lot of times you have your old regime, you have your new teachers who are so excited and they're ready to do all of the things, and you have your teachers who are in the middle, right? You can go one way or could go the other way. Well, what happens if you work with the people, if we spend so much energy trying to get people to see what we see, right? To make visible the invisible to them. And we lose out on opportunities to grow the people who are already there, who are already on board with you, and to organize with that few. You don't need everybody's. You don't need everybody's help, but you do need some people's help, right? Because it's a collaborative effort. And so I think it's important for me at this stage. I want to focus on the people who are with me, who I don't have to convince that racism is harmful 365 days of the year, right? Every day. And that how do we harness our energy and what we know to collaborate and to organize and to move work forward. Again, I'm not saying that's everybody's role, but that's where I am at today and how I'm trying to move. Who are the people who are with me and how can we use our energies to go even further, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say, I definitely agree with Rhonda in that, like, it only takes a few to really move a whole group in a new direction or a better direction. And so the approach has been historically, like, I got to get as many, the crowd needs to be as big as possible to move. No, if you're strategic and you're able to connect with leaders who are like-minded, then the leaders can help move us in a better direction. Likewise, we have also seen how a small group of people can move us in a bad direction or in a negative direction. It doesn't take many. You just need people who are in leadership and who have access to some resources, using those in the direction that they want to. And so that I do think, so I agree with Rhonda in that sense. One thing that I do in thinking about this question and thinking about like where we've come from, I like, as far as educators who are pushing the system, I'm still struggling with the fact that at one point, I felt like so much progress was being made as far as helping educators as a whole to be reflective over the role that either they were playing for contributing to the liberation of their students or contributing to racism in, their practices and outcomes. And so I used to always tell educators, like, we're not in control of everything as it relates to a child's experience. Like, we don't go home with them every day. We're not in control of housing. We're not in control of police or law enforcement or any of these things. But while students are with us on a daily basis, our goal should be that they get the best educational experience possible that's going to improve their life outcomes. And so, and progress was being made with that type of approach. And if you look at different systems, there were places that were really focused on equity, where outcomes were improving for all kids. And when that progress was happening, there was pushback, because there are people historically who don't want to see all children succeed. They want to maintain the status quo. They want to maintain a hierarchy. And so when people look around and they see the world responding to the unjust murder of George Floyd, some people are really bothered by that. And they're like, no, we cannot have people recognizing that racism is real, that our treatment of people of color is very different from our treatment of whites, that the outcomes in terms of housing and law enforcement and healthcare for one group of people is very different from those outcomes for other groups of people. And so you have this fear of this progress and feel like they're losing something. And so I feel like all of this pushback against diversity, equity, and inclusion is again just rooted in people's fear that they are losing out on something, that we actually are moving towards a more just society. And so now, when we get to the point where it's like, teachers maybe feeling like this is too much, I do think another thing that has made it feel like too much is the pulling back of resources for educators. Like, so you have to kind of look at systems and see, okay, why does it feel like so much now when so much progress was being made before? And once decisions are made that make things tougher for people to challenge systems, that's when it becomes too much. So you have to question what's going on, that all of a sudden now we feel like we can't challenge these systems, or now it's overwhelming versus all the progress we were making before. Again, I have a lot of thoughts on, decisions that leaders make that make it more difficult for educators to make our systems more just and more equitable.
So I just been like writing quotes frantically as you all have been talking, right? So thinking about the last thing you said, it made me think of, and I don't know who is responsible for the quote, but first they laugh at you, then they ignore you, then they fight you, then you win, right? I feel like we're in a pretty tough fight right now. But I'm just thinking of, I've been doing this now for 25 years. At first, it was laughable that we thought we could get to a place, right? And then, we were just like, we were talking and it was falling on deaf ears. And then as we started to get to a place where people were listening, and I hate that George Floyd had to die the way he did, so publicly, so graphically, so gruesomely, for people to see it, right? For the revolution to be televised, for the world to stop. And the world had already stopped. We were just talking about, this will probably be released in the summer, but right now, the day we're recording it is March 13th. Which is the anniversary for a lot of us, the 6-year anniversary of when we shut down schools during COVID. And, we were stopped. We were in a place where we were not moving, and we just had to sort of absorb that, and we could not ignore it. And because our news cycle is the way it is, it was just thrown in our face. So those of us like myself who had seen enough Black death porn is what I call it. I mean, it's just, just this constantly being thrown in our face, like, hey, we killed you again. Hey, we killed you again, right? We maimed you, we killed you again. I did not watch that video for I don't know how long, but ultimately I think all of us watched, if not the full video, portions of the video, and then we could no longer, not we, because we've been fighting all along, but others could no longer deny that, hey, this is a thing that's happening. I don't have the words to say to pretend like this isn't happening. Marco, going back to the question you asked, there were two other quotes that came to mind. You'll always be misunderstood by those who have no intention of understanding you. And you will always move too fast for those who don't intend to move. Right. So those quotes just stuck out to me as I was listening to you all. Anything else on this topic before we shift?
I do kind of want to go back to Des, if you could repeat the first quote about they'll laugh at you. What was that quote again?
It's first they laugh at you, then they ignore you, then they fight you, then you win.
Yeah. I just one of the things that I've processed that I haven't really spoken about is just, and I kind of want to go to Rhonda about this. I don't know if she wants to speak on this, but just the journey that she's been on as far as anti-racism, because I remember in the initial stages when she started this work, it was a challenge to kind of get it going. But once it got going, there was so much power and momentum behind it, right? And so because it started to resonate, I felt like initially, and maybe part of this is reflected in my experience in district leadership too, because where we are, it took forever for us to even acknowledge we should have an office of equity like that. People were kind of like, no, we don't need that. Particularly in a space that had a lot of Black and brown children, it's like, we don't need to talk about racism here because it's so many Black and brown kids. So it kind of, I felt like it didn't really catch on at first. And then people started to see like, no, this is something we need to talk about. We need to do something about it. It gained a lot of steam. And then the fight came, like the pushback, like when you see that momentum catching on, and then there's like the anti-CRT, and now it's anti-DEI, like this wave. And I don't know. I don't even know what my question might be for Rhonda, but just what that experience has felt like to see how, to take something and it starts in one place, it builds, and then just the visceral hatred that comes about because of the change that is happening, the change that is occurring. I don't know if any of that resonates.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of I think it's Adrienne Marie Brown's book, Emergent Strategy, and where she talks about like the ripple effect, like you drop a pebble in water, or pebble in water, it has the ripple effect. So we're doing little bitty things, right? I think when we are started, to a lot of people's surprise, and a lot of people trying to tell us not to do this work, don't talk about racism explicitly, take the fist out of your logo. I can't remember if we said that last time. Also, I'm the type of person, you tell me not to do something, I'm definitely going to do it times 2. So, and especially if I feel like your energy is not coming from the right place, right? So I do know how to listen to good feedback. But it wasn't a lot of pushback. Like once we got in front of people, it was, some people were curious, some people were nervous. But once we started the programming, like it really picked up. And I think in terms of doing this work, we were somewhat under the radar, right? And then I think in the midst of us building momentum, in the midst of, so we are started in 2015. So some things had happened and some things had not yet happened, right? So we're building momentum. So by the time 2020 hits, and is it Chauvin who murdered George Floyd? Is that the correct? By the time that hits, the momentum not only what we are is doing, but across the country in language of culturally relevant pedagogy, disaggregating data by race, like all of this type of critical race theory, this type of language has been building, right? That's not the start of it in that window, but it more and more people, it was becoming more common to people. The idea of having a caucus or affinity group, right? So then when 2020 hits and the whole world joins in a global protest, a global boycott, right? You have historically, because these things have happened historically, you have what is called backlash or a white lash, right, to that racial progress. And so now becomes, so for a small window, it ain't even been 6 years, right? So you have a small window of opportunity where a lot of people are on the same page. We're like, yo, this is real. This is wrong. We need to reallocate funds. We need to make it easier for nonprofit organizations to get access to money. We need to make all these shifts. And so when the people in power see that their power, because that threatens the power structure. If the world is equitable, it threatens the people who've been positioned to be privileged. Now you're no longer privileged. And now you no longer have supreme power and authority because it might actually be equitable. We were never there, but we was trending in the right direction. And that, caused that backlash. And so we've seen that more recently on this latter end. Post George, can you say post George Floyd? That feels that doesn't feel like the right language, but years after that horrific incident, you would think that we would still be moving forward, but the pushback power is great. And if we weren't hunkered in and truly, this shows you that a lot of people weren't truly committed, right? Some of it was performative. And so we've seen much more of the backlash on this latter end of our existence than we did when we first started.
Yeah, but as you get to the point where you can snap the rubber band, right? It starts pulling back. It doesn't want to be snapped, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's pulling back. And we're gonna find out exactly how committed everybody is to continue to stretching ourselves and each other, and this idea of this pursuit of happiness and being indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say a couple things. So, hats off to y'all for continuing to have and host like these types of conversations. And one thing about us and one thing about, people we look up to like Kimberly Crenshaw and, others who have just done Gloria Ladson-Billings, again, Black History Month, like people who have been carrying this work long before, the world started to recognize what was going on. And for those of us who are dedicated to it, we will continue long after, the pushback. And so I think, like to Rhonda's earlier point about those who have the mindset of moving forward in the work, like we have to be diligent and support one another and collaborative, because it's in community that we're able to continue to move this work forward. So thank y'all.
Okay. So my next piece is question is to sort of starts to veer into how politics are impacting and how we can impact, especially local politics. But to me, we see this battle played out between school leaders, staff, union leadership, district leadership. But at least in my mind, there are situations that are, I guess I'll just say it. It feels like I am seeing here in my own state where superintendents of color in particular, who are going against the status quo, are essentially being attacked. And that is by school boards, that is by various parent groups, people who aren't ready for that level of change. I've seen it myself from the principal's seat. How do you see white supremacist practices creating roadblocks for leaders of color? And how can these leaders continue to show up for their most vulnerable students? And then how can white and even less marginalized people of color, and that probably is going to cause some problems when I say less marginalized people of color, but how can they help support Black and Indigenous leaders?
Let's see. Rhonda, I was going to come to you for that one, particularly on that first one in like how white supremacist power structures and systems impact leaders of color, because we've seen that in multiple instances where we are. So
Yeah, I mean, it's again, Black people are living in present realities, and people want us to stick with the fantasy of things are fine just the way they are, the status quo, right? And they're not, because our lived experiences show that they're not. And so ways that I've seen it show up are, one, whenever, if we think about Durham, we've historically had a Black superintendent, at least for the last maybe 15 years. It could be more than that. And we have a lot of Black leaders in Durham. And Durham is considered a progressive city, right? But we're not. We're not as progressive as we think we are. We're progressive in some ways, but not as progressive as we think we are. What we've seen is really white liberals who come in from a spirit of benevolence and a spirit of who are progressive and who have ideas about how to move things forward, but oftentimes is couched in whiteness. And what I mean by that is their pursuit of power or saving a district or saving Black and brown children is rooted in sometimes oppositional stances or attitudes, like us versus them. As if there's one way, there's only one correct way, is either this or this, and either or dichotomy is very much a pattern of whiteness. We've also seen where there could be strong Black leadership, a strong superintendent, a strong principal, a strong Black educator, who is like, hey, I have a different perspective to offer, or like, yo, you need to tone it down a little bit because that's not how we need to advocate for this change. They're being stepped over, pushed aside, or even ostracized intentionally, things being pitted against them among the group to convince people to now don't listen to their voice, don't value this Black educator's voice, because they're not going along with the status quo. And they have the vision to call out when they were like, hey, no, this is not how we should move. This is not a liberatory framework. This is harmful. This is Black leadership that we're talking about. And so that's what we've seen. We've seen like white liberals who are well-intentioned on the surface, at least. And I think if you told, I don't have to say, I think when you tell them that you're operating from a white supremacist framework, they can't hear it. They can't see it, even though you have the receipts, right? And so when we're dealing with Black leaders who are trying to move things forward, and I'm not saying Black leaders are perfect, and I'm not saying they don't need to be critiqued, that we don't need to be critiqued, right? There are ways to do that and have accountability. But when you have white liberal leaders who are completely oblivious to how they're weaponizing whiteness in a situation, it stalls. It's a distraction, a detraction. It's hard to move the work forward. It's hard to keep students centered when that happens, and we're caught up in how we're treating one another versus how we're achieving the outcomes and the goals. And so that's what I've seen. I've seen this type of culture and behavior slow down the progress in academic achievement, right? And now we're caught in like trying to negotiate relationships among adults. And that's just unfortunate. And that's not to say that, Black leadership needs levels of accountability. They do. But if you show up from a power hungry or power hoarding position, as a person who identifies as white, or we've also seen people using Black faces to push, these to do their work so that they can, hide their hands behind the scenes. And when I say hide their hands, I mean white people hide their hands while they put a Black face out to say and do their agenda, if that makes sense. I'm trying to make sure I'm being specific and not just speaking in theoretical. So that's how we've seen it show up in our district.
Des, can you say that statement one more time?
America's Black starting five.
And for me, Rhonda just said it all. I do want to, and also I can 100% see what Rhonda's talking about because I've lived it and seen it. I do want to ask you all as podcast hosts, like, was it as clear for you as it was for me? And if there are any like follow-up questions to clarify anything, just let us know. But what she just said was everything for me. So yeah, like y'all have no idea, but yeah.
I could say yes, it was clear. And honestly, if anything, like listening to it, even I'm seeing myself in some of those issues. And I know I have that myself in it and I think about this a lot, especially with educators. Many of us have that savior complex chip on us because we all want to help and we think we're helping, but sometimes we're actually hurting more than we're helping in any way possible. And I think the part that I think for me, like resonated the most was the part where emotions, and you're saying now you're working on that feelings aspect between individuals and they're losing track of what we're working on, happens all the time. And I see that for all the work that my own district has done and in other areas I've been in, and having conversations with individuals who are trying to go through the work, or I should say at least going through work. I won't even say try. Some of them are being forced to go through the work. Some of them are trying to go through the work. Some of them are just saying they're trying, like because they like the idea of that, but not the actual ability to do it. I think that is a key component of it, where the idea that I made a mistake and I'm believing I'm helping. You tell me I'm making I'm causing more of a problem than good, which is feedback and should be okay. Turns into like, clutch my pearls. How dare you say that about me at this time? Do you know what I do for kids and what I try? And then it turns into, no, it's not about you. It's about the situation. And it comes in all the time. And again, and like, I will wholeheartedly say when I first started the work, I even had that part too, where I was saying that. And now I've understood to take a step back and just being like, okay, like unpack that for me. Tell me more so I can take the second to try to understand it, because you need to. It's not saying it doesn't creep up in all of us. It's still there. It creeps up a little bit where you start to have like, it touches you a little bit. Like, okay, I need to take a second before I react and someone tell me why. And then if you can do that, you can move the work forward. But I think that's the hardest part, specifically, I would say for white individuals to do it, because that means my good intentions are causing a problem, and that's not okay. Or it's that same way where you get the fear of, and I can honestly, I'll attest this, and I wonder if Des even remembers this conversation that we had on this. I had that conversation with him before, where I was like, I was afraid when I first started the work that I was going to cause more damage than good starting it. And then he told me it was a cop out. He goes, and he told me that's a cop out. And he's like, and what you're saying is that's also has a layer of white supremacy inside there, because you have the ability to say, I'm not going to do it. I had to take that second with that conversation and being like, wait, what? Wait, I thought you were going to talk with me and tell me like, what I can do for this. Like, how do I fix this in my own self? And it was just, no, stop it, get over it, and start figuring out your next steps. And I think that is something that a lot of people struggle with, is specifically knowing that we are in education, a majority of white females. That becomes a major component of it. And I think that is something where you talked about that is a key to a lot of this work. And I also wonder, though, at the same time, and I don't want to say I know what the answer is, but I have to ask the question of it. How do we help people get past that? And I know the answer is probably, it's not your responsibility, because it isn't. But the fact of the matter is, again, my savior complex kicking in, I have to find a way to do that in my head to try and help those individuals inside of, say, my own school or other schools when I'm working with people for it too. So I think about that part of what you said, and I don't mean to pivot it, but like, how do we get past that part?
Yeah. And I think part of it is to keep going. Right. So like in basketball practice, to use a sports analogy, which I know some people feeling some type of way about sports analogies, but you're gonna run through the play a few times, and then when you don't get it, you got to sit down, and somebody who knows the play and was paying attention, then they come in off the bench, and now you got to sit and you watch other people. Maybe you need to take a step, like those people take a step back and watch others until you catch on, right? But if we have to just keep running the same play where we're not progressing, or we're not adding new things to it, right? That's slowing us down. If you keep messing up, it's okay. Take a step back. Watch it. You have to go practice outside on your own. You might have to get a coach. You might have to do some reading. You might have to do some independent film watching, right? It's the same thing. Not 100% the same, right? But it's like, if you have to put in some individual work, and I think you have to keep moving forward. I think that's one of the best ways to help people is to keep moving forward. And the people who want to get in the game, they will do what they need to do to get in the game, right? And that's what we have to do. If we keep moving forward, we can't keep slowing down, right? But that doesn't mean you got to be left behind. It just means you have to put in your individual work to catch up. And that's kind of going back to meet people where they're supposed to be, where you ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then that helps them to better understand that they don't have the skill set yet, right? And now that puts more work on them, and so that now I can keep going forward, but I'm modeling for you as I'm still moving forward, right? And so now the work is on you to pay attention, to take notes, and to catch up, versus me to stop the forward progress and pull you to the side. Now, so in other instances, that method in your classroom that works, but as we're trying to do this type of work, we have to, keep focusing and keep moving forward.
I'm going to go in a way different direction because I have to admit that I have been following some of your social media, and I have been jealous. So you all took a family trip to the motherland. And I was just all over your pages, just soaking it all in, and just living vicariously through you and your adventures. I believe that was your first trip? Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that was your first trip. What did that trip teach you, and how were you impacted by that experience?
What did the trip teach me? So just to provide a little context, we had the opportunity last May, in May 2025, to go to South Africa. And so we went into a community outside of Johannesburg, Kwanga. And we were with a group associated with our church, but it wasn't a missions trip. We gained as much as we gave as far as our time there. And we spent some time working in a school in the community. So we were at the school and did some work with them for a week. We taught some lessons and just interacted with the community there. And it was just beautiful. The children, the educators, the parents, it was just as far as what I learned there, I don't know, it's hard to capture in words, but I can tell you just emotionally the way it moved me. It was a life-changing experience to see to work with the children and to see their focus and dedication to education in the space. And so that's one thing. And we also spent a week in Cape Town and just did some things there too. But I mean, it was a life-changing experience. It was an inspiring experience, and we just can't wait to go back. We toured Robbins Island, where Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for 27 years. I mean, we just did so many things, and the land, the people was just beautiful. And it was affirming in so many ways as people of African descent to be connected to the continent. You know, it's an experience we'll never forget. So those are my initial thoughts. I don't know if I answered a question or both questions, or if I was just talking, but that's what came out. Rhonda, how about you?
It was everything. When I tell you, I think if I'm not thinking about that trip and those experiences every day, it's every other day, literally. It was the stereotypical life-changing experience, you know, that a lot of Black people say when they go back, but it was part of what made the trip unique is that our leaders, which were our pastors, or our pastor and his wife, they've been before and they had a relationship with the school. So that in and of itself, to me, is significant because we weren't just popping in a place and popping out. I'm not judging people who do that, but there was already a pre-existing relationship here within the community. And so our pastor, Pastor Mark and Lady Amy, were very intentional about making sure this is a bridge building experience. So we got to have dinner and community with the school leaders and some of the local clergy prior to visiting the school. We did a lot of preparation for how do we show up? How do we recognize what we're carrying as Americans, even though we're Black, but we're Americans. We've been, you know, immersed in a white supremacist culture. How do we check ourselves, right, going over here? And so we spent a lot of intentional time being very thoughtful about how we wanted to show up and how we didn't want to replicate some other types of harm from Americans coming into their community. And when I tell you, these are the most beautiful, spirited people. Like I was checked in that I realized I don't have the level of faith that they have, and I don't have the level of joy. And that's not to romanticize their lived experiences, but the amount of joy that they carry in circumstances that, and these were not destitute people, right? I don't want to paint them as destitute, but you know, just very different lived experiences than what we have over here. We have a lot of amenities, right? Extraness, and just the level of joy, the level of unbotheredness. So, you know, we were showing up late to stuff. People's dinners were delayed because we were late. People's field trips were delayed because, and transportation is a whole nother story, but they were unbothered. You know how we are over here 5 minutes late, people wasting my time, and I could have been, and it's like, I'm so happy you're here. And it was just so much joy. And the children they were amazing. I mean, they're kids, right? They're still kids. But the level of joy, the excitement in seeing brown people, Black people come and visit them, because typically people who look like us don't always get those opportunities to go home and to serve and teach and work alongside them. And I mean, it was just amazing. And the way it made me feel, and if circumstances were different, America would not be my home. I mean, I was like, I'm ready. Like, I would rather, you know, see what fighting white supremacy someplace else looks like, you know, because I'm not saying you can escape it, but it was so much life-giving. And then we got to go to church. We were at one of the group homes there that was caring for communities. And, you know, from the way we view it, it may not look like a home that people would care, where people foster children in America, but what they have there, they appreciate every single thing that they have, right? And then it was dope too. We did get to spend like a week, you know, as vacationers, right? As tourists. So we went on a safari, and so we're seeing elephants and tigers, and we were seeing all these giraffes on day 1, and day 2 we saw lions eating a giraffe, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the giraffe we saw yesterday. And it was literally the circle of life like Lion King. And I was like, okay, you know, Rhonda, this is that baby giraffe. I mean, a zebra. It was a zebra.
It's a
That
zebra,
baby
yeah.
zebra. It was a zebra. That was a little tough. But and you know, and I think I'm more studied than other people, so I knew what Africa looked like, so to speak. Like it wasn't I knew it was beyond the stereotypical images that we've seen, and yet I was still surprised by the beauty. Like Cape Town is kind of like reminded me of LA a little bit, like on the coast with the water, city like, very much more gentrified than where we were in Kwamklanga. And but it was beautiful and it was cold. When we did the safari in the mountain, I'm talking about, I'm like, do I have frostbite? I was not dressed for this. It was really cold in the mountains. So I know we talked a lot. I don't know if you can tell that I'm in my head, I'm there, I'm seeing everything and I'm reliving it. It really was a beautiful experience. I want more of us more Black people to have that opportunity to go. And that's really what, what's the name of our trip? Kelvin, the
Sawubona Project?
The Sawubona Project, yes. And that's part of the purpose of the Sawubona Project, which is to be a bridge builder to get more of us to go back and see and experience, you know, the community. So it was dope. In conclusion.
Yeah. I also want to speak about Soweto because we did the tour in Soweto, toured the streets of Soweto, went to the Apartheid Museum, all of every piece of it would like resonated. And so, yeah, definitely thankful to the Sawubona Project and that experience. And I'll say too, just thinking about it from a faith standpoint, like part of what prompted our pastor and his wife to put this together is the history of white missionaries going to the continent, going to this community in South Africa in particular, with kind of a typical white supremacist lens from a faith standpoint. I'm not gonna get into all that. I don't want to get the podcast in trouble, but so the notion and so when you're coming with that lens, because it relates to what we're talking about here in education with that savior lens, like there are these people of color and these poor people, and we have to come and we have to save them, and we're not seeing the value in who they are. And so part of the purpose of this trip was to disrupt that, to bring Black people to the continent who were going to look at people through a lens of affirmation and was going to affirm people's identity and who they are. And also we knew that we would be affirmed in the process too. You know, just to know that some of the things that we've been taught about the deficiencies of people of color in America, you get firsthand knowledge in seeing, you know, people in the land where you're from just be amazing, beautiful, bright, and just, you know, reflections of divinity. So, yeah.
You gotta go. Look, it made it, because you know it's like a bucket list kind of thing. Like one day I'm gonna, and because this opportunity, I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be one day. Make a plan. Save your coins. and no, you can go. Like I just want more people to experience it.
Well, listen, if I wasn't sold before, you sold me. So I appreciate that. All right. So we've been doing this for maybe over an hour now. So I'm down to my last question. I know Marco typically closes us out with the question. So what does We Are have planned next? What are some things that we can look forward to?
For one, we can look forward to the Let's Talk Racism conference that is coming up next Saturday. Okay. So we're, basically a week out. Our theme this year is curating change, the art of activism in education. And so we're just really excited about that. We have a keynote speaker, Keith Knight, who is an acclaimed artist. He had a series on Hulu called Woke, and based off of his life. And so he's going to bring this artistic lens to the space and how, you know, art helps us to convey messages, and how educators we do that, right? First of all, teaching is an art in and of itself. But you know, we have a full day of different levels of art and artistry, and young people and seasoned people sharing their work in breakout sessions. So we're just really excited about that, and that is still happening. I mean, that conference is barely happening in this season. I mean, it's like the title of it is more contentious today than it was 10, 11 years ago when we started this, right? 10 years ago when we started it. So it's just interesting how the perception of it has changed and how funny people are acting now. But so we have that. We have our anti-racism summer camps. It's called We Are Activists Summer Camps for Children in Rising First through Fifth Grade, happening this summer. It's the 10th year of summer camp as well. And so this is a space where we have a camp for kids in rising first through second grade, and one for kids in rising third through fifth grade. And it's an anti-racism camp. And so we use a literacy-based approach to help children think about race, racism, skin color, and activism in very concrete ways. And we have, one of our main goals is to foster healthy racial identity construction in young children, right? And so we've been doing that. We have 2 in Durham and 2 about an hour away in Greensboro, so in the Triad area of North Carolina. And it's a multiracial space. It's intentionally multiracial. When we first started, we targeted white families in white spaces because oftentimes Black and brown families know that identity, race, conversations about that those are for us. Like, we're supposed to be in that space. And a lot of times white families aren't having those types of conversations or seeking those types of spaces. So we intentionally would recruit white families into those spaces. And one year we overcorrected because they were the majority. And that's not the type of the atmosphere we were trying to create. But we want white families and white children having these same conversations because it's a must. If Black and brown children are talking about it, or if Black and brown children are being victims at 5 and 7 and 8 years old, while white children are being perpetrators, then we all need to be learning this information together, right? And trying to develop a healthier racial identity and learning what it means to be in community and learning how racism actually is not a good thing. This is bad. And to be better, to have a better society, you know, we have to learn these things, and it's important to learn them together, right? So that's just a few things that we have coming up. And like I said, we're pivoting. We're still brainstorming about how do we navigate these times if we don't have the access that we've typically had to educators, if we don't have the access that we've typically had to schools and school systems. How can we still keep the mission going? And so, yeah, that's kind of what's ahead for us as we keep also trying to find funding sources so that we can keep compensating people for their work. And, you know, this is really dope, important work. It's forward-thinking work. This is work somewhat ahead of its time, but also not, right? Because a lot of people are like, how are you doing this with little children? We're teaching them. What do you mean? And normalizing. We're normalizing this. I'm not meeting you where you are. I'm going to show you this is what we've already done. You can come observe. You can look at these lesson plans, right? Because it is important that you learn, but we're doing it. It's happening. And it's not that fantastical. It's not rocket science. It's intentionality. It's care. It's concern. It's community. It's collaborative. And it's love. It's a lot of love. So that's what we got on the horizon.
So I have just one final question. We usually like to ask always our guests who are in the educational field, like one piece of advice they would want to give, you know, someone who's looking to become an admin or someone who's, you know, in the education field. For you guys, I'm going to ask the question actually instead of what would be your one piece of advice for an administrator who needs to start this work?
And is this an administrator who wants to start as far as implementing, or they're trying to start as far as learning?
Either way.
Okay.
Because to me, it's the same. Because most people that need to start this work need to learn this work first before they even get into trying to go to that part. Because if you can't first look in you, you're not going anywhere with it. So that's why I asked that question first if it's there. So, but yes.
Yeah. So I would say what so I'm a data person, and I always say to ground things in the data and to understand that data is diverse in itself. Meaning numbers can tell a story, but people's stories are also very important, right? So the qualitative with the quantitative. So really digging into and getting to know what are the experiences that different children are having in your space. Like, you start there and you start to look at the themes, and then you problem solve. I think one of the challenges, or one of the things that we're up against, is there are people who don't want us to have data-driven solutions, or to analyze the data, or to disaggregate it, as Rhonda mentioned earlier, by race, to realize that there are themes in Black children's experiences versus our Latina children's experiences versus our white children. Like, because once you identify, like, oh my gosh, like, we're doing the same thing with this group of children, at that point, when you do that, you can problem solve and you can start to correct your actions. And so, but I say that some people don't want that to happen. And so, if you're interested in doing this work, I do believe it starts in the data. In the data, you can find the data in the numbers, but also hearing people's stories and hearing the voices of people who historically we may not have listened to, or we may not have given as much space to. And understanding, as leaders, there may be spaces where you're in a privileged position and you need to take a step back to make sure you're hearing from people who aren't carrying that same privilege that you're carrying. By being in an administrative role, you're already in a place of privilege. So making sure that space is made, particularly, I believe in starting with the students, starting with the families, hearing those stories, looking at the outcomes, and then problem solving. So that's what I'd say.
One thing I would say, which comes from one of my mentors, Reverend Dr. Fatima Saleh, that comes from one of her mentors, Vivette Jeffries: write down the worst things that they could possibly do to you and do the brave thing anyway. Write down the worst, make a list of the worst things they could do to you. What's the worst thing that can happen if I speak up, if I change this, if I maneuver this, if I don't be quiet? And do the brave thing anyway. And when it comes to this work for administrators, don't overlook the power that you have because you're thinking about the power that you don't have. Principals are very powerful people in a building, very powerful. And so look what's in your locus of control and use it to work on what's within your building. What's within your building where you have a direct power source. So just one quick thing, for example, to make that very concrete for people, the school to prison pipeline is a metaphor, but it's real. The school to prison pipeline is rooted in children being written up and then being given particular consequences. Sometimes it could be leads to an arrest if you have SROs, school resource officers in your school. Sometimes it can lead to an expulsion. Sometimes it can lead to a suspension. But that system is put in place by the power of the pen, by the decision that and ultimately the principal makes and what that consequence is. And the principal has power over the policies around discipline within their school. And so I think that a principal can disrupt a school to prison pipeline within their local school. Like, that is power. That is real power. So don't get distracted by what the district is doing. And I'm not this superintendent. No, you have power that is literally within your building, that is within your locus of control, and you can make those things happen. And when you step out and push against the grain and disrupt the status quo, what's the worst thing that they can do to you? And do the brave thing anyway. So.
Just so you know, I wrote that quote down as you said it, because I plan on probably using that next week in one of my meetings that I have with a group of staff members, since this is going to be coming out much later. I have a group of staff members I'll be having a conversation with that I think that is a fantastic statement, and I love that line, and you will be quoted. I'll put it that way in that meeting.
And you let them know I got it from my mentor too. So
thank you so much for joining us today. Honestly, great conversation. I loved the first one, and the second one didn't hold back either. Getting an opportunity to have conversations like this, I think, are very much so important. Important for people like myself who need to hear it and need to be able to be a part of it and just understand and sit back and listen. And I thank you both for the work that you guys are doing. So I do think it's valuable, it's needed, and you're doing it even though it's hard, and that's the big thing. And I think that, like you even said, they're doing probably the worst things to you. They're trying to cut you off. They're trying to do those pieces, but you're still doing it anyways. And that's the key. And that's why you're helping individuals left and right. May not be as many as you probably want to, but it's still some. And that's the steps in the right direction. And hopefully they keep on moving in that same direction. And then those individuals help someone else, and those ones help someone else. That's all we can ask for. So thank you, honestly, for all that you're doing and the conversation, because it was fantastic. Des?
Write down the worst things they can do to you and do the brave thing anyway. And that's a perfect takeaway. I do want to say that I would like to sponsor or provide a scholarship for 3 students and 1 adult to the Let's Talk Racism Conference. And so we can talk about how I can support that. But I think that is absolutely amazing, powerful. And I was a huge fan of the show. And so I am sad that I won't be there for it. I want to try to help some others to be there for it. So I just wanted to name that. And, again, thank you both. I have always enjoyed conversations with you. Today was no different. I look forward to any pushback that we get online. I can't wait to fight the good fight. I'm gonna write down the worst things they can say to me, and then I'm gonna do the brave thing anyway. I appreciate you both so much. Thank you.
No, we appreciate you both, and just thankful for every opportunity to keep being who we feel God has called us to be.
Yeah. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again so much for this conversation. Des, as always, on a Friday, getting an opportunity to have a conversation with you after a long week of work. It feels like sometimes we're going to church from the individuals we have on and getting a chance to hear. So it's always uplifting, no matter what the topic is. And it's always great just to hear from people who love what they do and are passionate about it and seeing the things that they're doing. It's for us, and I'm probably speaking a little bit for Des, but I know he feels the same kind of sentiment as I do when it comes to this. Like, it's great. It's really a great way to enter into the weekend, getting an opportunity to have these conversations with great people from all across the nation. So thank you so much. Des, thank you as always for our conversations we get to have. With that, school's out.
Yeah, thank you.
You all will be missed. Until then, I gotta blow you a kiss. Until we meet again on that other side, this my rhyme. We all love you to the end of this time, always. Know this, you all will be missed. Until then, I gotta blow you a kiss. Until we meet again on that other side, this my rhyme. We all love you to the end of this time. Always.